welcome to Our Family's True Tales of the Supernatural. Some of my family told me a long time ago to make sure I don't focus on dark or sinister things. They were afraid that it might actually attract malevolent things. They wanted to make sure I didn't attract any spirits or hauntings or cause anything bad to happen. I could understand that. It sounds like good advice to me. So, I'd like to take this opportunity to talk about a supernatural story that leans a little bit more towards being inspirational. Something happened to me a few years ago. I had a dream that was like a near-death experience. I still can't quite figure out if it was a dream or if I died in my sleep. At the time, my cholesterol level was so high that I was near the point of death. I have no proof that I died, such as I can't say a doctor verified it or that I had any type of internal damage to my body from dying. So it could have been a dream, but it seemed like I went to heaven. I also noticed that many people who say that they had a near-death experience had a massive change in their views. They saw a great revelation of what they considered to be God's love, and it changed their life. I had some people teach me about this right before I had a dream where I went to heaven. I can also honestly say that it dramatically changed my life as well. A short time after I dreamed that I went to heaven, I started to experience hauntings and saw paranormal activity. I've also heard of other people who had near-death experiences or NDEs, and they've had similar experiences where they started to see spirits and various paranormal activity. Many of these NDEs help people learn about God's love and how to be more kind and easygoing in real life. So I'm not going to be ultra-religious or try to shove my views down people's throats. I'm a very easygoing person. Yet sometimes I will try to talk to ghosts that I encounter and tell them about the things I've learned about God's love. That's how I attempt to move the spirits on into the afterlife. A lot of this is common with people who have had NDEs or an experience that is somewhat like an NDE. Here's the story of what happened to me. The night between October 27th and 28th in 2004, I had a dream that was very vivid. The dream started off as if it was a scene from a science fiction story, yet there was a quick change that turned it into something that was much more significant. The dream started with me being the first captain of the first spaceship to go faster than the speed of light. I flew to the spaceship in a small type of shuttlecraft. As I got to the large spaceship, a set of doors opened on the side of the ship that opened to a small shuttle bay. Our shuttle entered what looked like the shuttle bay, and it looked like a big room, just enough to fit our shuttle inside of it. As the doors closed and air pressure filled the shuttle bay, I got out of the shuttle and went to the command center of the ship. We flew away from Earth and quickly flew back and forth across the top side of the galaxy to map it out. As we got back to Earth, a message got relayed to my ship telling me to report to a top-secret facility for another mission. I was being sent there as the first person to take part in a teleportation experiment. As I got to what appeared to be a tan office building, I walked inside. As I entered the building, I saw a long white hallway with a shiny white tile floor. There was a door on the right about halfway down the long hallway, so I walked toward the door. I opened the door and stepped through to a huge room that seemed like a big warehouse. As I entered the large, expansive room, I saw a chamber with high-tech equipment around it. The chamber was a little bigger than the size of a living room. The top of the chamber looked like it was about 10 feet high or 3 meters high on the outside of it. There was lots of electronic equipment around the exterior walls of the chamber. There was also an open doorway on the left side of the chamber near the front corner. As I walked into the large room that was like a warehouse, some scientists described how the test would proceed. They quickly talked about the technology. They assured me that they had already run several successful tests. Those tests included tests on solid objects and animals. I was going to be teleported to the same location, but in a different dimension, and then they would bring me back from that other dimension. They also said that it wouldn't hurt, but that I might feel a slight tingling sensation and see a bright light. One scientist brought me to a doorway on the left side of the chamber so I could enter. I saw red lines on the floor that crisscrossed inside a red circle in the middle of the chamber floor. They told me to enter the chamber and stand in the red circle in the middle of the chamber. I was then supposed to wait for them to turn on the equipment. I also noticed that there was a window at the front of the chamber. It was about 4 feet high and 6 feet across, 1.3 meters by 2 meters. As I stood in the chamber, I looked through the window to see a few scientists working. They were working with some computers and adjusting some electronic equipment. As I got inside the chamber and stood in the red circle, I told the scientists I was ready and they could start whenever they were ready. A moment later, after adjusting the electronic equipment, the scientists told me they were turning on the teleportation device. I couldn't tell if anything was happening at first. I heard a slight humming sound, but that was all I noticed. I continued standing in the red circle in the middle of the chamber, waiting to see if anything would happen. A few seconds later, I noticed a glowing, hazy light around my body, and I heard a humming and buzzing noise. As the seconds went by, the light seemed to shine brighter and with more intensity. The light grew so bright that I couldn't see anything but the light. I had to close my eyes since the light was so bright, yet after a moment I could still see the brightness through my eyelids. I put my hands over my eyes, but after a moment I could see the bright light coming through even with my hands over my eyes. The intense light was giving me a headache because I could still see the light with my hands over my eyes. I could tell that the light was still growing brighter. The light was getting so bright that it gave me a real bad headache and the pain was getting worse. I dropped to my knees and tilted my head down toward the floor to shield my eyes some more, but the light kept getting brighter. As the pain grew worse, I leaned forward to put my head down on the floor so I could shield my eyes even more. I rested my head on the floor since the light was so intense. I then noticed that the humming and buzzing sound was fading away, but I then heard an extremely loud noise. It seemed like a loud trumpet or a chorus of loud trumpets were nearby. The noise of the trumpets was so loud that the floor shook from the vibrations of the thunderous noise. I then took my hand off my eyes to cover my ears while still keeping my face down on the floor to shield my eyes. I then heard a thunderous blaring voice that was so loud that the sound made the floor vibrate and shake. The voice sounded like a man saying I was in the presence of God, and the voice asked, "Who entered that place?" I still had a bit of a headache, and I was a bit startled by all the loud noise, so I didn't answer at first. I listened to see if anyone else entered and see if they would answer what the guy was asking about. Since nobody else spoke up, I started to speak up myself. I said, "I don't know if anybody else came in here, but I'm here, and you got to do something about that bright light. It's giving me a headache, and all the loud noise is hurting my ears, and the floor vibrating and shaking is kind of scary." I heard no loud response, as I heard a moment before that, but I heard a shuffling sound around me. The sound seemed to indicate that someone or a few different people were walking around nearby. At first, I thought someone was coming over to beat me up. I thought to myself, "Oh, here we go. I guess I'm going to get beat up." I tensed up and cringed so the beating wouldn't hurt as much. Then I felt a cloth slide over top of me and a hand gently touch my right shoulder. I cringed since I expected to get a violent beating. I then heard a calm and gentle voice tell me that everything was okay and no one would hurt me. I then heard them say that I should put on a special robe that they were giving me. They told me that the robe would cover my body and it had a special hood that would cover my head and my face. The cloth would filter the light so I could see a lot better without the light giving me a headache. I tried to stand up as I allowed the robe to slip down over my head, arms, and body. The robe's smooth cloth slipped on easy and completely covered my face and head. I was finally able to comfortably open my eyes and see around me. I stood up and I could see what seemed like an enormous white room that stretched as far as the eye could see. Even the white floor seemed to extend as far as the eye could see. I couldn't see any walls in any direction. It seemed like there was a white ceiling, but I couldn't tell how high it was. All I could see was white in the background, so I couldn't even tell how high the ceiling was. I noticed that there were several groups of people all around me. The groups were different sizes. Some were groups of 2 or 3, some groups had maybe a dozen or a few dozen. These groups of people looked like they had been having conversations with each other, yet now they had looks of concern as if they were wondering if I was okay or not. I looked to my right to see that guy who had helped me put on my robe, and he was glowing a golden color. I wondered if he was an angel, but I didn't ask. I looked off into the distance, which seemed like 200 or 300 feet away, which would be about 70 to 100 meters. I saw something that seemed like a large, bright light. It was the only bright, shining object that was still too bright for me to clearly see. My robe couldn't filter that light all that much, but it didn't hurt to look into that light. I then considered that I might be in heaven or that I was seeing a vision of heaven. I also considered that the bright light in the distance might be God. I thought to myself that I should try to be on my best behavior, be nice, and say hello to God, if it was God. I then smiled, waved my hand, and said hello to God. I then heard a mellow yet loud booming voice echo back saying, "Hello, my son, I love you." I stood in awe, and I was speechless when I heard him respond to me that way. The glowing person next to me then told me, "You're loved, accepted, and welcome in this place." I was also told that I was always welcome there, and that they would welcome me back in the future. He then told me that the people who sent me there were trying to bring me back. He then told me I should take the special robe off so they could bring me back. I took another long gaze around the place so I could see as much as I could see. Then I figured I saw all that I could see, so I attempted to take off the robe by pulling it over my head. I then noticed the stark beaming light, and I shut my eyes, but my headache returned. The glowing person beside me helped me remove my robe. I then heard a noise that was a combination of humming and buzzing type of a sound. I then recognized it as the sound of the teleport machine. I had my hands over my eyes by this time, but I could still perceive the piercing bright light that made my head hurt really bad. As the light dulled down close to a normal level, my headache immediately disappeared and went away. As I opened my eyes, I saw the inside of the teleport chamber and the scientists. I felt overwhelmed and I dropped to my knees on the floor in stunned amazement, and a tear rolled down the side of my face from my eyes. I shouted for them to turn the machine back on and send me back. I told them that I had been teleported to heaven and I wanted to go back. They told me they couldn't turn it back on because the electronic equipment needed to be calibrated. I was disappointed when they wouldn't send me back. I stood there for a moment hoping they would walk away and I would be able to sneak over and turn it back on. I then waited for the scientists to walk out of the room, and I tried to turn the teleport machine back on. A scientist came in and told me I couldn't do that. I then told him I knew I couldn't, so he should help me. I then turned around to turn on the electronic equipment with the help of the scientist. As I turned around to turn the machine back on, a security guard came in and told me we needed to clear the room so the equipment could be calibrated. So I walked toward the main exit door that led to the hallway. As I was walking out through the doorway, I remembered something one scientist told me. The scientist told me I would get teleported to the same location, but in a different dimension. I then realized that since I had only traveled to the same location in another dimension, it meant God was right here with us. So that meant that God is always right here with us. As I walked out the exit door to the hallway, I had a strong desire to tell all my friends and family about this. I even resolved within my own heart and mind to go tell them about it. As I walked out the door into the hallway, I woke up and thought long and hard about what I had seen in the dream. I lay there in my bed in just stunned astonishment and amazement. I don't know if this was a real trip to heaven, a vision, a dream, or a near-death experience. Sometime later, a doctor told me that my cholesterol was so high that I wouldn't live much longer unless I stopped eating fast food hamburgers and took cholesterol pills. To this day, I don't know if maybe I died in my sleep or if it was only a dream. I don't have definitive proof that I died, but it sure was a wonderful experience to visit heaven. I never felt so loved and accepted before like I did when I visited heaven. I've heard that a lot of people who have NDEs come away with a similar feeling. They seem to get an overwhelming feeling of great love and acceptance. If I really went to heaven, I sure hope that the next time I go, I can stay there. It was so pleasant and filled with so much love and acceptance that I didn't want to leave. I can tell you, though, I sure look forward to going back someday. This is one of those stories where a lot of people think, maybe I'm just too overly imaginative. Well, I guess people can think what they want. I have no proof one way or the other. All I know is that these were the things I saw, and I ended up waking up in my bed in the middle of the night. Whether it was a dream or death, I just don't know. I do think this marked a point in my life where my perspective on life changed. I also like to remember the things that happened, and this is a good story that keeps me away from dark and sinister things such as hauntings and scary ghosts or spirits. Although as far as I can tell, I think most of my experiences with paranormal activity seem to start after this dream or this visit to heaven. I'm certain that I never saw any apparitions or shadow figures before that time. I also like to recall this story from time to time to remind my family that I'm not focused only on the dark and eerie things. This story is true, as are the other stories I talk about. There are several stories where my family and I talked about our experiences with the paranormal. That's why I say that these stories are our family's true tales of the supernatural. Supernatural can mean a lot of different things, both good and bad. Let me tell you another story that illustrates some other inspirational supernatural things that have happened to me in my lifetime. One of these types of things occurred a few years ago. It was the night of Thursday, May 21st, 2015. I had gone to bed and fallen asleep, and I heard someone call my name. It was as if someone was standing near me in my bedroom and speaking softly to wake me up. It sounded like they called my name, and I replied, "Huh?" I then completely woke up and asked, "What?" I slowly opened my eyes, but I didn't see anyone in my bedroom. As I looked around and saw no one there, I remembered that no one else was home. My other family members had all left to go on a trip a couple 100 miles away. I looked at my clock and saw that I had been asleep for about 5 minutes. I looked outside my window to see if a friend or neighbor spoke to me because they needed help. I didn't see anyone outside my window either. I wondered if someone was at the entry door to the house or if someone was trying to break into the house. I went to the main entry door and looked out the window that was in the door, but I didn't see anyone. I was about to get a flashlight to look around outside, but I noticed that our pickup truck had a light left on inside of it. I then got the flashlight so I could look around and go shut the light off in the truck. I carefully stepped outside to look around, then went over to the truck and turned off the light. I wondered if the voice I heard was that of something supernatural or paranormal. I wondered if it might have also been either God or an angel. I thought I heard a person's voice that woke me up when I was sleeping. Well, whichever it was, I was thankful to get the interior light of the truck turned off. If I hadn't turned it off, the truck's battery would have been dead the next morning. I would have needed to go through the hassle of trying to jump-start it again with another one of our vehicles in the morning. I considered it an act of God to help me out, whether it was supernatural or even if it was only a dream. I was still thankful either way because at least I didn't have to jump-start the car and have to deal with a dead battery. I've heard a voice like this a handful of times in my life. Sometimes there would be similar circumstances where I was helped through the circumstances, or I was helped shortly afterwards. Sometimes it pointed me to situations where I could help other people. I just consider it to be a situation where I can help people, or maybe the situation where I receive the help. Whatever it is, I can tell you that it's one of our family's true tales of the supernatural. What do you think of this sort of situation? If you've ever had an experience like this, let me know in the comments below. If you have any other reasonable comments or questions, feel free to put those in the comments section as well. As always, please click the like button to help the algorithm so other people can find the show. If you know other people who like paranormal shows, feel free to share it with them so they can watch it as well. I hope this has been an enjoyable and inspirational set of stories. I know for sure that it's been one of our family's true tales of the supernatural. As for now, I'd like to say, I hope to see you in the next episode. Goodbye for now.